When you think of the Arctic, what comes to mind? Probably just a lot of ice, maybe some polar bears. For most of history, that's pretty much what it was, this vast, frozen expanse at the very edge of the world. But that is changing, and it's changing fast. Today, the Arctic is quietly becoming the center stage for a massive new global power struggle. So let's dig into why this frozen frontier is suddenly at the heart of, well, pretty much everything.
So that really brings us to the big question, right? Why on earth are the world's superpowers all racing to control what most of us just think of as a frozen wasteland? It seems kind of crazy. But the answer? Well, the answer could literally reshape the future of our technology, our energy, and even how money moves around the globe.
Okay, so our story here kicks off with a real-life mystery. Think of it as a cold warning. The year is 2022, it's January, just weeks before the invasion of Ukraine. Way up in the Arctic Ocean, near a remote island chain called Svalbard, these super important undersea cables get damaged. Mysteriously. Now, this wasn't some random accident. Nope. This was a signal. A really clear signal of the kind of secret tensions that are boiling just beneath the surface in the high north.
All right, so how do we make sense of all this? You've got damaged cables, quiet military buildups, shifting alliances. It's a lot. We need a way to cut through the noise and see what's really going on. And for that, we need a simple, powerful framework.
And that framework is called the Pillars of Power, from our friends at Aquavis. It's actually pretty simple. It boils down all this geopolitical complexity into just 3 core ideas: technology, energy, and money. And you'll see, as soon as we apply this lens to the Arctic, the whole picture just clicks into place. It all starts to make sense.
So here's our game plan. We've got our cold warning. We've introduced the Pillars of Power. Now we're going to dive into each pillar one by one. Technology, then energy, then money. And finally, we'll pull it all together to see what people are now calling the Great Arctic Game.
First up, technology. Now I know what you're thinking. The Arctic, a tech hub? It sounds strange, right? But believe it or not, this frozen region is becoming one of the most critical spots for our entire digital world. Let me show you what I mean.
So remember those mysterious damaged cables we talked about? Well, those aren't just any old wires. Undersea cables are basically the hidden nervous system of our planet. They carry something like 99% of all international internet data. We're talking about everything, from the GPS that gets your food delivery to your door, all the way to the top-secret military communications that guide satellites and weapon systems. They're not just important, they are, quite literally, everything.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. There's this incredible, and kind of surprising, link between the frozen ground of the Arctic and outer space. Think about it. Satellites are what gives superpowers their edge, right? Military superiority, global communications, GPS, all of it. But here's the catch. To control those satellites, you need ground stations back on Earth. And you need those undersea cables to connect everything. And where are some of the most important ground stations on the planet located? Yep, the Arctic.
The Arctic article we're drawing from puts it pretty bluntly. It says, if you control space, you control warfare. And to control space, control of the Arctic is critical. Just let that sink in for a second. Suddenly, the Arctic isn't just some remote, icy place anymore. It's a central nerve center for modern national security.
But wait, there's another layer to this technology pillar, and it has to do with something we're all talking about: AI. Artificial intelligence data centers are, well, they're insanely power hungry. They're like giant digital furnaces. And get this, somewhere between 30 and 55% of all that energy is used for just one thing: cooling them down. So where's the best place in the world for a natural, free cooling system? Exactly. The Arctic's cold climate is a huge economic advantage, making it a perfect spot to build the future of AI.
So, all this talk about energy-hungry data centers and technology, well, that leads us perfectly into our second pillar, energy. Because beneath all that ice, the Arctic is basically a giant frozen treasure chest of untapped resources. All right, just let these numbers sink in for a moment. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates that the Arctic holds about 90 billion barrels of recoverable oil.
Then there's the natural gas, a staggering 1,670 trillion cubic feet of it.
And on top of all that, another 44 billion barrels of natural gas liquids. In a world where having your own energy is the ultimate power move, numbers like these are, well, they're absolute game changers.
And it's not just about oil and gas either. The Arctic, especially places like Greenland, is sitting on massive untapped reserves of rare earth minerals. You know, the stuff that's absolutely critical for making batteries, electric cars, wind turbines, basically the entire green energy supply chain. So whether you're talking about old-school energy or the future of green tech, controlling the Arctic is key.
Okay, so we've got critical technology, and we got vast energy reserves. What happens when you put those two together? You get the third pillar, money. As the Arctic ice melts, it's not just a climate story, it's an economic one. It's literally opening up new routes for global trade and finance.
Just take a look at this comparison. For decades, the world's shipping has followed these established routes, through places like the Suez Canal. These are largely controlled by the US and its allies, and all that trade happens in a system dominated by the US dollar. But these new Arctic routes, they're shorter, they're more efficient, and this is the big one, they create a pathway for countries like Russia and China to build a trading system that bypasses that traditional Western framework entirely.
And who has the advantage here? Well, this is where Russia has a really unique trump card. They are the only country in the world with a fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers. What does that mean? It means they have a huge head start in opening up these new sea lanes, in controlling them, and of course in profiting from them.
So, there you have it. The three pillars: technology, energy, and money. Each one is a huge deal on its own, but the real power comes when you see how they all connect. So let's zoom out, tie it all together, and look at the big picture, what's being called the Great Arctic Game. The key thing to understand here is that these pillars don't exist in a vacuum. They feed into each other, creating this powerful feedback loop. It goes like this. The massive energy reserves in the Arctic can be used to power the growing tech infrastructure there, right? That combination of tech and energy then makes these new shipping routes and alternative financial systems possible. And what does all that lead to? Entirely new global power structures. It's a chain reaction.
And listen, this isn't some far-off future scenario. The game has already started. We're seeing the chess moves being made right now. The US has talked about acquiring Greenland, Russia is flexing its muscles over the new shipping lanes, China is building out its own satellite network so it doesn't have to rely on anyone else's, and other Arctic nations like Canada and Norway are beefing up their military presence. The pieces are moving on the board as we speak.
Strategist Pippa Malmgren has a perfect quote for this. She says, "We're witnessing a hot war in cold places." It's a great way to put it. The competition is very real, even if it's happening quietly, way up north and far away from the daily headlines.
So, when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway? It's this. The Arctic isn't just melting. As the ice disappears, it's actually revealing the new fault lines of global power. It's showing us the future of technology, the future of energy, and the future of money. It's all happening right there. And so the real question isn't what's happening in the Arctic. The real question is, are we watching?